25 degrees, you mean, I'm assuming that's Celsius, right?
Yes, yes, yeah. So it's about 80. Today it was like 88, which
Right.
is Fahrenheit. So which was kind of pretty warm for this time of the year. So
It's out here in Hyderabad. Uh, right now it must be about 38, 39 degrees Celsius, and
okay,
it will rise up to about 43 later today.
okay. Yeah, I was in
It's just
Nagpur last year actually when it was like 105 or something. So my
it'll be
parents are in
very, very
Nagpur.
hot.
So yeah.
Nagpur is one of the hottest in the town. Okay, Tushar, let's get started. I think Yogesh is already signed in, so we have the right people here to listen in to you and learn from you. So what we will do is I will open it up to you. I'm sorry again. You introduce and then do a roundup of your presentation that you wanted to share, and once that is in place, we can open it up for discussion, because I know that at least two groups have questions, and I
Okay.
also have questions to you
Okay.
on
Sure.
how we could do some projects at inside of Boeing.
Okay.
So
Sure.
over to
Yeah.
you, Tushar.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. So again, I think you must have figured out this is my name is Tushar Dani, and I'll talk to you briefly about my background in a few minutes. But I'm based in Seattle. Mike Hauser and Sanjay requested that I sort of share some information with you. I'm also the IT business partner for HorizonX, which is how I got connected with Mike Hauser and then Sanjay. So I don't actually have presentations. I actually have maybe one or two charts I'll show, and then I'll also talk to you about the Boeing organization, because I think it's very important to understand how the organization operates, both at the enterprise level and also within IT, right? And I'll share with you some examples of how that will work. Before I do that, again, congratulations to all of you. I recognize all of your names from the press announcements that was sent out. And actually, out of the six teams, two of the teams that did not make it were from my team. So uh, I'm sure you guys did really well. So really looking forward to see what exciting capabilities and products you come out with. And then in case I don't mention this later, there's going to be all sorts of issues showing up and all that. And I just want to emphasize that if you run into something, please let me know. If I don't have the answer, I can easily find out where to get that answer and help remove roadblocks. Okay, so quickly about myself, just so you get some perspective. So I obviously grew up in India. I went to IIT Bombay, did my mechanical there, and then came to the US almost 25 years ago to do my master's. Went on to do my PhD. Most of my interest was in robotics, computer graphics. My PhD was actually in VR. And 20 years ago, I was actually part of a startup for virtual reality, actually for design. We didn't get anywhere, applied for various funding sources and all that. And reflecting back, it is clear to me why. One was I don't think we had a very solid business value proposition looking back. And the second was I don't think the technology was ready for what we were planning to do, right? It might be getting there now, but just wanted to share that experience. So after that, I worked at Ford Motor Company in Dearborn, Michigan. So again, another sort of giant enterprise with sites all over the world. We used to have Jaguar, Land Rover, Mazda, and so on and so forth. Of course, they've all been divested now. And then I came to Boeing. So I was in IT, right? So really more IT, computer science background. But when I came to Boeing in 2007, I was actually on the business side, right? So again, and the most interesting thing was I was sort of, I think I might have been the only Desi guy in a 900-person organization. So you can imagine how the situation was, right? So here I was sort of outsider in multiple perspectives. I came from the automotive industry, also from a different country, even though I had lived here for quite some time. So that in itself was an interesting experience, sort of dealing with people who've been here for a long time. And again, I draw upon those experiences to solve problems even today, right? And then the thing with Boeing is it's not a single. You can actually do multiple jobs. So I'm actually on my third job in Boeing. So I was in the business side for 5 or 6 years. I came over to IT in a chief of staff role. So in the enterprise architecture organization. So a chief of staff is think about you're the sort of right hand man or woman for the typically a vice president. So you get to see and get to all sorts of things, get to see the organizational dynamics and politics, which obviously actually helps you later on when you want to try to solve things. And then over the last, I would say, year and a half, I've been leading this advanced services development team, which again I'll talk to you in a few minutes, right? So that, in a nutshell, is my background. So starting with, let's see. So before I get into what my team does, I was quickly going to show you the Boeing organization. So and hopefully you are familiar to some extent, but I wanted to explain how the business works, right? So again, I'm in the IT organization. We are partners to the business, right? And we exist to enable the business to achieve its goals and objectives. So from a sort of profit and loss perspective, the three main business units are defense and security. Am I sharing my desktop? Hold on one second, actually.
Sir, not yet.
Yeah, it's
now
coming.
it's
Okay.
coming up. Yeah.
So Dennis Mullenberg is our president and CEO. Hopefully this is big enough. So defense and space, Leanne Carrot, that's we refer to it as BDS. There's Boeing commercial airplanes, Kevin McAllister, right? So that's all our commercial airplanes, the wide bodies and narrow bodies, mainly made in Renton, Everett, which are in the Seattle area, and Charleston. Before I jump off defense, so again, most of our defense products are made in St. Louis. There are also satellites and so on spread all over the place. And of course, parts for those are made pretty much all over the world. So again, defense and space, Boeing commercial airplanes. And the most recent new business unit is Boeing Global Services. So this was actually about a year old, right? So the reason it was stood up was there was a realization at the top levels of the company that both Boeing commercial airplanes and defense and space had service arms presence in multiple countries, right? So, BCA, obviously, we had a big footprint in India. BDS, we had a footprint for the P8 Poseidon, but those two teams were two separate teams, right? And yet, Dennis Mullenberg at the company level is trying to drive a one Boeing approach. So what happened was the services arms of those organizations have all been merged into Boeing Global Services because yeah, there's a slight difference, between defense and commercial, but in terms of services, it's still services. That's one reason. Second reason is, and you might have heard this, and don't quote me on this, but I was in another presentation last week where I heard that we have the 50% of the installed base of airplanes in the world, but only 10% of the services business, right? So it's a huge opportunity. So it's part of that $50 billion opportunity. That's the goal. Which is part of the Boeing Global 2025 goal of getting to 200 billion, right? We are about $95 billion company right now. The goal by 2025 is to be a $200 billion company, and Boeing Global Services is going to be a big chunk of that, right? The other organizations you see are there from what are called functions, right? So there's Boeing International, to sort of a specific organization dedicated to making sure we have a sort of good international presence, human resources, of course. I'll come to IT and DA in the end. Government operations, so dealing, especially in the US, I'm sure they have employees in different parts of the world. But as you can imagine, aerospace is a very sort of a crown jewel for most countries, right? So we obviously in the US have to make sure that all the we have a good understanding of all the laws and things like that. There's this thing called Export-Import Bank. Make sure that it's still there because our customers use that to fund airplanes and so on and so forth. Then there's OIG, which is all the law, internal governance. So we just went through our ethics training that's run by this organization, amongst other things. Supply chain and operations. So out of the 100 billion, I think 70% of the value is created by our suppliers, right? So we are mainly, if you look at our factories, there are specific things that we manufacture, but most of the stuff is made by our suppliers, right? Up to 70%. So supply chain is really huge, and of course. The supply chain, we are growing in India, in Bangalore, for example, there's quite a few suppliers and so on and so that. And the reason I know that is because my wife works in supply chain. So, and then communications is obviously got to be consistent. Phil Masser just joined a few months ago. If you're following Twitter, you can see he's bringing a new level of transparency. I think he came from Starbucks, but I'm not really sure. I'm not 100% sure. Finance, and then ET&T, right? So Greg Hyslop is the chief technical officer. So this Boeing Research and Technology Organization falls under that. The Boeing HorizonX organizationally also falls under Greg Hyslop. And then saving the best for last, right? So IT used to be just called information technology until about 2 or 3 years ago. Also, Ted was not directly reporting to Dennis. There was a chief technical officer. His name was John Tracy. And the fact that Ted now reports to him is just showing to everybody the importance that IT, which is now called IT and data analytics, brings to the company, right? So that's the overall organizational structure. Any questions at this level in understanding how the business works?
Hey Tushar, Ramit here. One quick question. You mentioned Boeing is capturing today 50% of the airplane business, but 10% of the services. What is
Yes.
the comparison to?
No, just in sheer numbers, right? So if you look at the installed base of airplanes, okay, I think what he's saying is 10. We think we are only addressing 10% of the addressable service market.
And who is the other, I mean, major players
Other
for
is
the
like
90%?
Lufthansa and Korean and all those guys, right? There's all these different companies that provide services for our customers.
Okay.
Right? Lufthansa, Technique, Korean Aerospace, things. Those companies, at least I know of them. I'm sure there's more. And by the way, the interesting thing is sometimes they can actually do it at a lower cost than we can, even though we own all the drawings and all that. So you can imagine, right? That's quite. I mean, these are our products, yet outside companies can service the planes cheaper, basically. Another example of that is converting passenger airlines to freighters and things like that, right? So we can do it, but there's outside companies who can offer better rates. So again, cost structures, all those sorts of things. That's the opportunity. Okay. Any other question?
Got it.
No. Okay. So let me go into IT and DA with, of course, sort of. Most hopefully this will work. So again, as I mentioned, Ted Colbert, he's a senior vice president. There was another sort of chief technical officer in between. That's gone for the last 2 years. One of the main reasons for this is an initiative called the Second Century Enterprise Systems Initiative, which is actually run by my boss, Dave Bernert, and I'll come to him in a second. So that's this. So that I'll talk about enterprise architecture. But again, in the IT world, so you saw the business units. There were three main, and then there's supporting functions. In the IT world, the two main organizations that provide products and services to the business are product systems. So Russ Benson is the VP of that, and product systems provides all the processes, the tools and capabilities to design, build, manufacture, test airplanes, right, and sell airplanes, basically, right. So that's product systems. So everything to do with products. Maybe I should not say airplanes, any sort of flying platforms, right? So that's one organization. And the other organization is, where is that? Business and supply chain. So everything else like HR and ERP and all those sorts of things fall under Lakshmi Eleswarpu, right? So she's the VP for that. So those are the two main sort of product delivery organizations. Supporting them, we have the global infrastructure organization. So as you can imagine, Boeing, 160,000 employees spread it probably in like 60 plus countries. Everybody has phones and networks and laptops and all that. So all of that factory infrastructure, everything is managed by Toulouse's team. We have information security. As you can imagine, we are constantly under threat from the outside, given all the IP and everything else that we have. So their job is to make sure that the company is secure, right? That's in InfoSec. IT International, Monica Panpadia, she's dotted line to Mark Allen, who you saw on the other page. This to make sure that we have a footprint from an IT perspective in all the sites that we have. Analytics and information management, again, a new organization just started 2 years ago. Harish Rao is leading that, and they are responsible for the Boeing analytics platform, right? So that's an example of realizing the value of the data that we have, and then the goal is to offer that as a service both inside and outside. So he's leading that. This used to be part of EA, enterprise architecture, by the way, until a few years ago. And then we also have these roles called business partners, right? So there's a BDS, business partner, who interacts with the BDS business unit. Vishwa Udanwadikar interacts with BCA business partner. He's a BCA business partner VP. And then we have BGS, right? So again, two organizations delivering, sort of supporting is IT International, and then AIMS has got the analytics platform, and then we have business partner organizations to understand the business sort of, I won't say requirements, but really understand their pain points and anticipate their needs, and then bring that information back to IT so that we can help the business sort of take a step function change forward. So within that, enterprise architecture has a unique role. So typically, enterprise architecture in most IT organizations, we set the standards and patterns of what should be done and not be done, right? I mean, as you can imagine, in our portfolio, over time, they've grown out to 7,000 applications. With every new application, there's an additional cost, right? So whether it's supporting it and maintaining it, the databases, and so on and so forth. So EA often is almost like used to be like a compliance function, meaning they're checking and auditing and things like that. However, with Dave, who joined us from HPE, by the way, a few years ago, he's the program manager for the Second Century Enterprise Systems program, which is a multi-billion-dollar, multi-year program to kind of drive a step function change in our product lifecycle management, ERP, and manufacturing operations management systems. The tools that have been chosen, and we have multi-year contracts, is Dassault systems for PLM and MOM, and for ERP we have SAP, right? So those are called sort of bedrocks, right? Those are the sort of foundational tools that have been chosen. I won't go into the whole org structure within that. Now, within that, I have the advanced services development team. So the role of my team, and I think I'm going to switch to a different chart here. Let's see. Yeah, this one. So actually, before I do that, so what I wanted to say was, as you can imagine, for a 160,000 people company, Ted Colbert is actually responsible for all the IT systems in the company, and this is regardless of whether IT is doing the work or not, right? So as you can imagine, there's this, and this happens in most enterprises, right? So either IT is not fast enough, or maybe we haven't been able to do exactly what the business wanted. Business will go and do some work on their own with contractors and so on and so forth. So at Ford Motor Company, we used to call them shadow IT. Here we call them employee managed applications. In any case, the responsibility for all of that falls on TED and on IT, right? So what that means is, and within that, if you look at enterprise architecture, so let's say you're working with you're trying to develop a particular capability and you want to use XYZ software, it's very likely that we already have a standard to doing the same thing. So there will be discussions about, do we want to add this thing into our portfolio, right? Because remember, as I said, every time you add a different way to do the same thing, you're adding cost to the company, right? So that's where the tension starts in terms of following standards and patterns and so on and so forth. And that can also lead to, we often refer to Boeing, it's like turning a giant ship and all that kind of stuff, right? It's like, okay, driving some change is so difficult, but usually there are good reasons for that, right? So for example, we have some legitimate security concerns, right? I've been working now for a few months on getting Dropbox access for HorizonX, right? Right now within Boeing, if you try to go to Dropbox, it's blocked. Now, there's valid reasons for that. The question is, how do we overcome a workaround? And then, we've been working on it for a few months. In fact, I was doing some trials even today. It wasn't quite working. So we still continue to work on that. The goal is we want to sort of move forward, right? So that's the typical sort of Boeing. And I've seen the same thing at Ford Motor Company as well, where large companies sort of slow to change. There's a good reason for that. Underlying that is our basic, if you look at the basic DNA of the company, we are a hardcore engineering company, and our products have to be like 6 or 7 9 reliability, right? Which means we are very, very risk averse for good reason, right? Because if we make a mistake, people die, and that, even though it's related to our products, that culture pervades the company. So in general, we will be sort of risk averse and trying to just follow the standards and follow the same path that we have. However, with a lot of changes that have come, including this Second Century program, it's actually and with the new leadership, the especially on the IT side, we are taking smart risks, right? So my team is an example of that, right? So I've blanked out the names of the various products we are looking at, but as I mentioned, I'm the HorizonX business partner, so a lot of stuff HorizonX is looking at, we get to look at. We have very fast processes by which we do what is called early research, looking at different technologies. So just as an example, HorizonX was looking at a particular AI machine learning company. We turn over these tech briefs, we make them available via an application or a app on the phone. We launch innovation pilots, and again, we try to get through this in 2 months, right? Which is like unheard of, right? Typically, this would probably take a year and a half. And the result of that is, by the time you actually want to do something, that technology is gone, and whatever business benefit you could have realized is wasted, basically. So again, my goal is to get through this in 2 months. Not there yet, working on it. And then not only to finish the pilots, but then actually get it into production, right? So, and again, the leadership is there in place to help make that happen, right? So I have my boss's full support to do that, and so on and so forth. So the reason I'm sharing this with you is to show you that while there is a perception that IT or Boeing is slow to change, things are happening. We've also adopted the pivotal approach. We have an initiative called the Digital Transformation DTE. That's changing the way programming is done within the company for software and all that. So again, if you come and see those workspaces, they look like you wouldn't know if you're at a Google or a Microsoft versus a Boeing, right? Again, that transformation is happening slowly, right? So I just wanted to share that aspect as well, that with all the new leadership that we have, the goal is to move fast, switching to agile versus the traditional waterfall, removing the roadblocks. And I would say the main philosophy is begin, let's deploy things fast and early, get feedback and move on, right? And I know from my own experience when I was in the business, IT would say, give us requirements. And it's like half the time we didn't know what we wanted, right? It's only when you start trying things out that you realize that maybe there's a better way to do it. So that's one aspect. Second thing I wanted to share as an example of change is at Bangalore, we inaugurated this biotech IoT lab in January. Now, equipment is still coming in, but the whole idea is it's like a maker space, right? So there's going to be a lab in Bangalore. We're also setting up a similar lab in Bellevue. So again, something that we haven't had for a while, it's happening. Folks are doing all kinds of POCs with Raspberry Pis and so on and so forth, waiting for more equipment to come in. So I think that's the story I wanted to communicate. I probably went a minute or two over than I wanted, but and there's much more to talk about, but that's the landscape. So I'd like to hear your questions.
Tushar, this is a great insight. Quick question. So on these POCs, you mentioned the quick innovations. I think that also is a very powerful thought and initiative. Uh, are you also engaging with, let's say, your partners as well as this HorizonX and the startups uh, at this forum as well?
No, so what do you mean? So I'll give you an example. Let's see. Let me take the latest example. So as I mentioned, right, there's so stuff. This might be a little bit difficult to see, but basically, inputs are coming into me from IT executives from the second century program, HorizonX, right? So if HorizonX, let me use that example. They wanted us to look at this particular AI machine learning company from a perspective of should we invest in this company? So we took a look at it. And again, by the way, all the expertise, my team is pretty small. I've got 6 people in India right now and 3 or 4 people here. And then, given that it was in the AI machine learning space, we partnered with the analytics organization, did a quick research, sort of the tech brief, right? 2 pages, which says, this is the technology, here's the background of the company. This is how, given the fact that we are in EA, we are able to say, okay, this is how it fits with the overall architecture. And we gave a thumbs up. Now, if HorizonX I think they are working on closing that deal. If that happens, I've told the person responsible that the moment it happens, please tell us, we'll do a POC or pilot, right? So we are ready to launch that. That's one example. Another example is sometimes our executives go and meet sort of different companies, and then the idea is, okay, let's try this out. Stuff comes in, we do the tech brief, and then we start planning for the pilot. And again, the first thing we always do is check with the bedrocks, right? Make sure that we are not overlapping existing capability, because we don't want to do that, right? We only want to introduce new things, basically.
Tushar?
Okay, but another example, for example, is if let's say there is a problem statement, and for that problem statement, does your team also come up with a concept, proof of concept as well?
It depends. See, the thing is, remember I said, so, uh, when I explained the org structure, so remember, if I go here, if I go up one level, right? So we tend to be a little bit more forward thinking, you understand, right? If there's a problem today, let's say there's a problem in the factory and the product systems team is dealing with that, and so what should ideally happen is, maybe there is no solution, then they could come to us and say, hey, the advanced services development team, do you think there's a product out there that matches this, right? And if that happens, then we'll reach out to HorizonX and ask them to help us um, sort of identify whatever that is, and then we could do a POC under our umbrella if they so choose, basically. You understand, right? I mean, we have so much work coming at us. I don't usually go and ask for stuff. If people come to us, we work with them, basically.
Got it.
Tushar.
Yeah.
Hello,
Hi,
Tushar.
Tushar. Viresh, I'm Chandra.
Okay.
I'll ask the question.
Okay.
Yeah, okay,
Okay.
no problem.
Hello, sir. I'm Chandra from Drone Aggregator team, actually. So
Okay.
I have one question regarding how IT team would basically support this HorizonX activity in terms of the IT policy, basically. So my question is basically, so in our in our idea, basically, we need to create one kind of a platform or website. And but if you go with this Boeing policy or Boeing rules, so for everything new, basically, we need to get the approval, and most of the approvals takes a lot of time. So if you want to do something outside, or we need to use some third-party software or something, it will take a lot of time. But within a startup environment, basically, we need to do everything rapidly. So we need to do the proof of concept, we need to do the prototyping. So how this IT team is like, can IT team support in any other way, basically,
No.
to
So
do it
as I
fast,
said
actually?
before, tell me what it is. I'll help you. So don't worry about that.
So
So,
Tushar, this
hi
is
Tushar.
Sanjay.
Hi.
You mean to say, means if I put my exact requirement, okay, I need to do this, so then it will be better for you to support?
No, what I need to, so what I'm saying is I can remember that I'm going through that myself. I just said, right, it's taking me 7 months to get through
Okay.
Dropbox. So to
Okay.
some extent, I'm dealing with the same problem every day, right? Whether it's
Okay.
contracting or so. Um, so I have two hats. I'm speaking from two perspectives. Once I understand your problem, if it's something that I can help you with, I will. Otherwise, I will get you connected to the
Okay.
right people. That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But I'm going
That
through the
will be
same
Tushar,
thing
sufficient
myself,
for us.
okay? Just so you know. So,
Uh,
hey
Okay.
Tushar,
So
this
for
is Sanjay.
yeah,
Chandra, just a moment. So let me ask one question on behalf of all three internal teams because they all have similar problems, and so I'll take the liberty of representing them.
okay,
Um, the Out of the three, two are exchange, kind of companies. At most, their MVP system will be like a web application with some database behind it,
okay,
and the third team, Mpro, is somewhere we're still defining what they will do, but it at best again it will be some kind of an application.
okay,
Now, question is, if you want to put this up, there is a UX component which will be the bulk of any MVP that we end up doing,
right,
right? And some kind of a backend system that gives a sense of life of that application. That you
okay,
click on something, some data comes out, right?
right,
This is broadly how these MVPs will look like. And
okay,
once we get past, once there is a budget, how the application gets built is something that we will be able to figure out over the next few weeks, months, etc.
okay.
But the immediate challenge is how do we get that done? Is there an infrastructure that the certain application could be built upon? Those are some of the challenges or questions that we
No, for the
we
internal team
come
or the
across.
external? Which one? For
This
the
is all
internal team.
I'm only asking internal because
So
external they are
internal,
free
we
to
have
do.
all this cloud foundry and all that, right? It should be doable.
Mhm.
I don't really see why there should be any roadblock. What's the roadblock
Okay,
for internal?
okay. Good. So then, start suggesting? Let us say that if we wish to do some MVP right now for the July demo day, we come to you with some sense of a scope, a design, as to what we wish to do as part of that MVP, and then work with you like a little project to see how it can be worked out. Right? Is that a reasonable way of doing it?
So a couple of things, right? So
Mhm.
as you can figure out, I rarely
Yeah.
get to do any hands-on technical work anymore. However, let's do
Uh-huh.
this. If I can understand what you're trying to do, I can
Yeah.
get you in
Yeah.
touch with the right people, and they will be able to help you.
Also, I'm not saying you will do the work.
Mhm.
It is these teams who will do the work,
Right,
right? It is getting the access to a certain sandbox environment, and you mentioned Cloud Foundry, which sounds very good, right?
right. So
Getting
yeah,
access to the
yeah,
sandbox
I
environment
think
is what
all
we will
the
come to you
systems are
for.
there in place now. I think in
Okay.
India there might be some challenges because my own team is running into that problem. But
Okay.
if I can understand what your requirements are,
Yeah. Yeah.
then like I said, my own team is developing applications there, and they have to do all sorts of
Great.
getting
Great.
through hoops. There are teams for cloud and all that, and I can help connect you to the right people and make sure that things get followed up.
Okay, excellent. So Now
So,
that said,
hi,
the three internal teams will come to the external teams. Just hold on, external teams, right? The internal teams.
Sanjay,
Um,
Sanjay,
yeah.
just one thing,
Who is
Yogesh here.
this? Okay, Yogesh.
Yogesh, Sanjay. Thank you for asking that question. I think we all have that in mind. Just one thing, I just want to share my experience. Hi Tushar, this is Yogesh. I worked with again with Ford Motor Company with IT for 5 years, and I just saw you left the company when we opened the Smart Mobility. It's a section similar to Horizon X in Ford, and we also have PCF, Pivotal, and doing a lot of POCs. So what the challenge I have faced as an internal team doing couple of POCs in Ford is one, getting that PCF sandbox itself for a smart mobility Horizon X kind of a POCs and initiative took 2 months. Normally, it will take like 6 months. The second thing is the EA, the enterprise architecture reviews. You can't deploy anything to PCF till the time it is reviewed by the architects. So the whole process, it's a cumbersome process of 2 months. And for us, they have came up with a lean EAA architecture review process. So is there any special categories for Horizon X? The architecture team is doing some lean processes or something, or they are defining a generic sandbox in the PCF within the PCF, which will be acquired without getting so many approvals, a database, a PCF space where all the POCs can be done in a lean way rather than going with a traditional all the processes.
So a couple of things. One is now there is a team within EA that does the architecture reviews and all that kind of stuff. So remember, my boss is the chief architect for the company. Okay, and even when I tell him it's going to take me 10 days, he tells me you should do this in 3 days. Okay, so we will have the support we need. So again, I'd like to understand your requirements first. So from Sanjay, if you can help me understand
Yeah,
for maybe
yeah.
each of the teams, what exactly are you looking for? And then
I
I will
will.
make sure that,
Yeah,
by the way, the other thing I want to say is with, like I said, I am myself, right? Harish Rao, for example, the aims, when I tell them it's taking me, I've gone to meetings where they'll say, Tushar, start the POC on Friday. And then I look at them saying, do you even understand what your own organization demands? So again, the expectation from the executives is we should be able to go fast. However, the proof is in the pudding, right? So I would like to understand your requirements and then I will help to drive those so that you can, we
perfect.
can't afford to wait 2 months, right? I mean, I'm telling you right now, my process is supposed to finish in 2 months. I'm nowhere near that and I'm not too happy about it.
Right. So, so Yogesh, Nandita, and then the third team, Chandra, and the all three teams, right? Um, what I what I suggest you is you design your MVPs. Whatever you wish to do as part of MVP, assuming you can get whatever you need. Okay, let us come back, as in Tushar and Sanjay, come back and tell you that something is not feasible. So don't constrain yourself when you think. Think bold, think big, and think differently. Unconstrained by what technology allows or does not allow. Yeah. Um, let's and if you can just start putting together what your ideas are and share with us by the end of this week, we should be able to get you the right support very quickly after that. Tushar, do I make sense? Is that
So,
something
by the way, my team, there are a few members of my team, right? As I said, two of the
yeah.
60 members were from my team, and I was happy that they at least made it to the final round. But
Oh, okay.
in terms
I
of
didn't know.
capability that's available for the internal teams, especially, right? I mean, so we have standards in the cloud space and Pivotal Cloud Foundry. So I mean, at a minimum, if you guys have some conceptual architectures of your systems, then we might be able to start guiding you right now. See, because life will be easier. And by the way, right now, I think the way things have been designed, again, I don't know the 100% details. It should be able to accommodate whatever you want, right? Now, if you have a design choice to make, and unless there's a very compelling reason, I'd say go with what's already there, and there should be things there that you can use
Yeah,
right now.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So that's good. Actually, I think Nandita and team is belongs to your organization. That's what I feel. I may be wrong though. So
Yeah, I
this
think so.
is
Yeah,
good to share.
actually, yeah, they are part of.
Okay.
I think there's one team from product systems and one from business and
Correct.
supply chain.
That's Nandita's. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's Nandita. Okay, good. So this kind of covers the internal teams. Then there is I see that the Vaishali is on the call, Hassan is on the call. Hassan and Vaishali, do you know, if there is, I'm not saying now as part of MVP, but immediately after, let's say during our discussions over this week, do you have any questions, related to doing any POC with with the engineering teams if we get some? Think again a little bit ahead of our meetings and put your questions forward, because we are speaking to the right guy here.
Absolutely, Sanjay. Hi, Tushar. Vaishali here from Mauritius. First off, thank you so much for this session. I think you've done a good job of trying to demystify IT for us, especially with Boeing. I mean, from the beginning, we've been told things like that whole IT department is really scary, right? And the fact that for us, for example, to do a POC, the fact that we have a completely offline desktop software is a good thing. So actually, my first question is around that. How much of a difference does it make if if the startup which is coming in and wants to do a POC and things work out both ways, has a completely offline software as compared to something that needs the cloud from time to time?
So you mean it's completely like desktop based? Is that what you're saying? Or
Yeah, so I'll just give you a quick brief, and since you have a PhD in VR, I think you'll totally get it. So we have this software which essentially is like PowerPoint for extended reality. So what
okay.
it does is, for a non-coder to create an augmented or virtual reality experience, all they need to do is import 3D data into our software, and they can export it as a AR VR experience across devices. And while in the software, we have certain tool sets for them to be able to edit or manipulate that data.
Okay.
Choose the module which is relevant. So
All right.
essentially, it's like, yeah, it's basically, it's like you know uh,
Did I lose her, or are we? Did she just?
Hi Tushar, this is Hassan, Vaishali's partner. I think she's having some connectivity issues. So I'll just complete her sentence. She was saying we're basically offline PowerPoint for extended reality.
Okay. So yeah, but I think we might dive into a bunny trail here. But so you're exporting like CAD data into your format, and then you have a tool that takes that and reformats that for use with like Google Glass or HoloLens. Is that what it does, or?
That's essentially right. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I mean, like I said, we are already using similar capabilities within the company, so I don't think it should matter whether it's cloud or not, right? I mean, so I don't think, and again, I'd like to, I mean, probably want to understand the architecture a little bit, but it shouldn't matter, right? And by the way, her comment about scary IT, remember, I'm in IT, right? And still sometimes it's scary for me. But so again, I'm saying to everybody, I'm there and I'm there along with you. Sometimes I've been here in this organization for 4 or 5 years, right? 4 years. So we'll solve things together. So, yeah.
I think the question is coming more from a perspective of an external party wanting to deploy software, whether that's desktop or cloud. How much of that, how much of an impact
So,
that's going to
okay,
make?
let me separate those. There's two parts of the question. So, if the question is if there's a software that's a desktop software versus cloud, I don't think it matters. The other question is more tricky. Remember, I said, and by the way, we are having this issue with another HorizonX company, Upskill, right? Because the standard for, let's say, those instructions and all that is this Dassault systems, right? So we've been running into those issues. If the standard is Dassault systems, then for example, we've even told Upskill, hey, why don't you work with Dassault? Because we don't want to get into the business of integrating different software stacks. You understand? So that's a separate question, though, right? So I want to separate the two things. One is cloud versus non-cloud, doesn't really matter. But in the case of XR, for example, the strategy for the company is really to be leveraging the Dassault suite, right? So there could be some further discussions required, right? If there's an expectation of using that, then POC might be okay, but in production, we don't want to deal with sort of 3 separate vendors, because then we have the headache of making sure everything is working together.
All right, makes
Tushar,
sense. Thank you.
one quick follow-up question on
sorry.
this.
Sorry, Amit, I just wanted to, just one more bit there. Thank you, Tushar, for that. It'll be great if we could also connect with you, and if Sanjay can organize that offline, we'd love to be able to, understand from your experience a little bit in terms of, like you said, you'd also like to understand the architecture. So it'll be great if we could do that. And also, so I just have like one generic question, in terms of, what are the typical things that a startup coming in basically needs to look out for in terms of, say, if you have a hypothetical checklist, what are some of the the things which could be tricky for a startup, or things that we should or could look out for? Could you shed some light on that? Thank you.
So I mean, so let's say your product is ready, right? So and you saw the funnel that I talked about. Let me go here. So it'll be the same process from my perspective, right? So let's say let's say you come in as a HorizonX company here, right? We'd probably do this tech brief, which should be easy since probably we are working with you. But look at some of these, right? We will be looking at your architecture. Does it fit with the second century enterprise systems architecture or not? And that's the point I was saying, right? So in terms of checklists and all that, I mean, the standard security stuff and all that will be there, but really the strategic alignment is going to be important, right? Does it fit? Or if it doesn't fit, is it filling a particular niche that the existing solution is not filling, right? And then what would be the roadmap for us to transition that? So there's things like that, I think, that probably we'll pay more attention to, right? In terms of, so if you were thinking that your product is wildly successful and you want to deploy it, that's probably what we'll end up doing. Again, I'm not so concerned about the security and those sorts of things. Those are, those you can take care of. The strategic alignment will be the more tricky part, right? Especially if you're like I said, in the AR, VR space, right? We are following a particular direction. We are establishing a reference architecture, for example. By the way, we do that for everything, right? Part of this role is, if you notice here, as we introduce new technologies, we are looking at blockchain as well, right? So we are working on we've done a couple of POCs on blockchain. EA as an organization doesn't deliver blockchain capability. There will be another service organization that does that, but we are in the process of developing a reference architecture, right? Which means if something else comes in with a blockchain, the first question we are going to ask, how do you align with this? Because we've made these design choices, right? And you've got to fit within that.
Makes sense. And this reference architecture, you could make that available to us if required, like when the time is.
Yes, exactly. Right. So by the way, for AR, VR, like I said,
perfect.
Lots of activities in the company, and when we do the follow-on, I'll probably have to pull those people in, because I myself have not been very plugged into that world. But we can pull in the right organizations and managers and so on, so that you can understand what's the landscape like.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And just like an add-on, possibly stupid question. So, in the things that you check with startups, the team size and which country they're in and all of that, those things don't really matter, do they?
No, so I'm letting HorizonX deal with all that. So you understand, right? So when stuff comes to us, I mean, if HorizonX has already done the vetting, so we deal with the technology, right? So they're asking us for our technical expertise on, hey, is this AI machine learning company something we should look at? And then we give them back a report. We just did a thumbs down there was an IoT rated company, and we said, nah, we don't think it fits. And by the way, the reason we said it doesn't fit is because it doesn't fit in our strategic long-term architecture. They may be a perfectly fine company, but the question was, do you think this fits into Boeing? And our answer was no. So.
Got it. Thank you.
And Tushar, this is where the follow-up question I had is, when you say it fits into Boeing, so are you saying that a startup or a company or a product technology which fits into Boeing from the perspective of purely consumption?
No, I'm saying from an architecture, right? So remember, I'm part of enterprise architecture, right? So we have an architecture defined for, let's say, blockchain, right? So, and we are picking a certain set of technologies, right? So we obviously want everything to align to that pattern, right? Rather than start bifurcating, because we end up in the mess we are today with 6,000 applications. We can't afford it, basically, right? So I think that's what the startups should keep in mind, right? I mean, I get so many of these. I got another one from HorizonX about collaboration tools. It's like, you know what? We've got Microsoft Link and Skype. We've got Mattermost. We are not going to do something else for an enterprise of 160,000, no matter how good it is, right? So I think keep that in mind, right? It's like, in most cases, we will have strategies and roadmaps for different capabilities. And so there's either two options, right? So either when a startup comes in, like I gave an example of that IoT particular, we said doesn't fit because we have existing strategies. In the case of that AI machine learning, we felt it was unique enough. So we said, okay, yeah, thumbs up on that. So it's not so much consumption. It's really more about, do we have we have a concept at Boeing about business capability maps, right? So we have these business capabilities, and they start at a level 0 and they go down to all the levels. We don't want like 5 solutions satisfying one business capability because we are wasting money, right? Now, there could be unique niches where something is filling a gap, and we are okay with that. But in general, we don't want, like 5 things trying to do the same thing. Like, for example, we don't need 5 ways to do instant message within the company, right? Just one is enough. So things like that.
Sorry, Tushar, probably I will, ask that question maybe in a different way, because I think I'm not sure if I still got the answer. So let's say, you mentioned that Boeing has got only around 10% of the market share from a services business perspective.
Right.
And some of the startups or the tech they will bring to the table may not be of, let's say, complete from a consumption perspective. Let's say, take the example of terminal operations. Today, there is a significant amount of tech going into the passenger side of the experience in terminal operations.
Right.
And I understand there are some initiatives happening within Boeing at a very, very high level.
Right.
And that may be of a tech which may not be of a direct consumption from Boeing perspective, but it may at some point of time will fit or will become part of a strategic in nature, given if there is a connected terminal to aircraft operations.
Of course, yeah. So that
So
would
how do you look at those kind of things where some of the patterns may still be evolving?
Yeah, so I'll use an example. We're looking at 5G right now. One of the use cases is not only 5G in the factory, but what about 5G in the terminal? So yes, there will be things like that. So I think I understand. There's one model for internal consumption, but in the case of Boeing Global Services, is really meant for customers outside the company, right? I think that's a different thing. We obviously have more, like some of this XR stuff, maybe are internally, it would be nice to use it, but maybe it's an independent package solution that we can offer off through BGS. That might work. Ideally, we'd use it inside, but we can't talk about that right now since we don't know what it is and so on.
Okay. And
so
given you mentioned there is this...
Sorry, go on.
Please go on.
No, I was just saying, just remember that deploying internally versus externally is 2 different things, right? I mean, we don't really, how should I say, internally we want to constrain the choices as much as possible, because not constraining means increasing cost.
Yeah, right? that I get it completely.
Yeah, but now, externally I think there's more choice. Yeah, so externally you can probably do more.
Got it. So now, you also mentioned that there is a set of existing strategies and some business capabilities map as well.
Yeah.
So is it a possibility to get some kind of early preview of it so that we understand the landscape better before we come back with some relevant
I think the business capabilities are really high level, and it's like a little bit, I think all the companies have signed PIAs. So I don't think, in fact, I would reverse the thing. I'd like to understand what these projects are doing so that I can connect you all to the right people, actually, right? To the right kind of teams, so that you can start having those discussions, because in some cases things don't exist, right? Like AR, VR, there's a lot of work going on inside the company, and we just started, Gujun Wang, he's our chief MOM architect. We just started discussions with Dassault and saying, hey, what's the AR, VR roadmap going to look like? So it's not ready, right? So I would...
sorry. Tushar, I was actually going to say that it may be, going too far, maybe putting the cart before the horse. Let's Amit and Vaishali, let's first get something lined up from business point of view. We know now that Tushar is there to help us if we need something, but first I guess before we get too far into seeing, getting a preview of the architecture, etc., which I know will just not be feasible. Let's first get a sign of, some kind of setup happening from business point of view, and then we'll reach out to Tushar. I think that's the best approach, to get going in a realistic manner.
So, like I said, I think what I need to do is I need to understand at some level what exactly you're trying to do, so that I can start connecting you with the right teams inside IT, right? I think that's going to be important, because remember that eventually, if you want to deploy that capability, now I think in the case of the product systems team and business and supply chain, it's relatively easy, right? I mean, you are in your organizations, and hopefully the stuff you're developing falls under the domain of your organization, so it should be easy. So I'm still willing to help that, whatever help you need. And I can actually, if things are not moving or something, I might be able to just push here and there a little bit. But in the case of the outside companies, again, would like to understand what exactly, other than seeing the high level descriptions, I really don't have too much of an understanding. And again, I may not have all the answers, but I can connect you to the right people. So.
Right.
So
I think,
Tushar,
yeah, that makes sense.
Go ahead.
sorry, so Tushar, what would be the right way to do this? Like, do we have a separate call where we kind of go a little deeper into what we are doing? How would you want to do this?
So I think I need to talk to Sanjay and Mike Hauser, right? Because uh, so I think we had a good discussion today. So hopefully, the main message for all of you is there's help available, right? And this, or what all of you are doing, is terribly important to the company. It's the first time we are doing it, and it's a sign of how Boeing is trying to be nimble. So we are all going to help you. So I think I need to, based on the question that came up, I probably need to have a quick discussion with Sanjay and Mike and understand how we orchestrate that, because there will also be, like, you're going to start needing resource requirements and so on and so forth, and I may have to maybe at least share this with my director or something and say that, okay, these sorts of demands are going to come. Let's make sure that we are ready to help. I think, given the visibility all of you have, the help will, the help is going to be there. And of course, I can use Monica for that as well. So I think we need to do a framework of engagement, right? So now we did this
Right.
sort of one call, and now it's like, okay, now how do we take this thing forward in a sustainable way?
Yeah, that's right. That's right, Tushar. I think we need to do some groundwork. Um, if there is a POC sign, to be signed up, all these things will get triggered off as a result of that sign up activity. That is the that is the source of subsequent conversations. So we need to do that first, Vaishali and Amit, um, and then naturally it will follow through these conversations with Tushar and his organization.
So I would say, as you're building your plan, you need to
Hmm.
account for, I mean, basically in this
Correct.
case, Boeing IT and DA is providing consulting, right? So
Absolutely.
what I can help you with is, I think you're going to need this organization and that organization. So let's make sure we get that commitment up front. We don't want to end up in a
Yeah.
situation where, oh, you're looking for some help and then people are not available or already pre-committed. So that's the part I just want to talk to Sanjay and Mike about, and we can probably enlist Monica's help. The thing is, we'll have to come up with a systematic plan saying that, okay, we expect so much sort of support from IT and DA, for example, things like that.
Makes sense. But just wanted to put this out there, irrespective of the POC, whether it happens or not, could we still like just kind of get a sense of, your perspective on, for example, where, Red could be useful, or, what the process looks like, since you've already been working with AR/VR, for instance, just a little bit of insight on that as a more informatory call, or maybe email, or however
So,
that
like I
works, like
said,
something along those lines.
I need some basic information about um, what exactly you all are proposing, and once I see that, I can go and reach out. So remember, so by the way, let me clarify one thing here. For stuff that's in my control, you have my commitment, right? I'm just committing all my people without even knowing what the work is. The challenge becomes when we start, I can't commit for others, you understand, right? And that's where some of the
Absolutely.
bureau, right? So it's like, I can't commit to you that I can get XYZ from product systems, right? Because I have to do some homework for that. So if I can get some information about what you're doing, what I can do is I can talk to. In fact, one of the managers just spoke to me the other day. I'll say that, hey, there's this team in India, they're doing this. Is your SME subject matter expert available for a quick phone call? And then we can go from there, right? So we can do that, that sort of stuff. I
Perfect.
think that won't be a problem. Um,
Perfect. Thank you.
but I would recommend putting like those sorts of things in your planning process, basically, right? As that, okay,
Right.
for your particular, in this particular, like I said, the AR, VR, there's lots of fragmentation even within Boeing right now. So
Right. Makes sense. Thank you.
So, Tushar, Sanjay here. In fact, there are several calls that are, that have been set up and are being set up with each of these, six startups from within Boeing to help them with variety of, support. So, for example, there is a there are two calls with engineering and engineering architecture teams that are lined up this week
with who again?
with
So who are
Vaishali
those
and Hassan.
people? Which
So,
which team
okay,
is
let me
that?
tell you who they are.
So by the way, so here's where my chief of staff stuff comes in handy, because if you tell me who they are, I might be able to tell you if that's the right team or not.
Kip Kohima, Kip Kojima or Kip Kohima is, is going to speak to the Mauritius team, for example, right?
Okay, I have no idea.
Also, there was a call that was set up with a 5G expert. It could not happen, so that the Just IoT team could benefit from understanding the trends of how 5G is, evolving over a period of time.
Oh, I
So
see.
those are
Okay, so
those are the kind of calls we have already set up, and some of them have already happened.
okay.
For example, with EOL, we had a conversation with ILS. I know that it is not in the domain of this discussion, but there are about 15, 20, or even more of these internal mentors, and you included actually, who are helping this set of 6 startups to go from point A to point B. So yeah. I mean, this has been quite a significant effort. I'll share that list with you. Actually, you will be
right.
you will
I
like
guess what I'm saying is I'm curious. Are these IT people or some other department? Right. That's what I'm trying to figure out, because those names don't seem familiar.
they're not IT. They're mostly
Okay.
business side of the teams actually.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
The one
So I'll
thing I would
share
say
that
is,
list with you,
yeah, sure.
Tushar.
Yeah, share
And
it.
what
Yeah.
I request of you is, if you think there are others who we should speak to,
Right.
I'm happy to set up, because then more is useful. Given that we have this limited window of 13 weeks, what we could accomplish, the more we accomplish, better it is for everyone. So
So yeah,
I'll
if I
share
know the
that list.
name and the topic, then what I'll try to do
Yeah,
is I'll try
yeah,
to get the corresponding IT person as well, right?
yeah.
Because
I will do
see,
that.
the
I'll
IT
share.
person, see, here's the thing. Um, I was in the business, and IT was scary and all that, but the thing is, the IT people will know more about the roadmap and what's happening
Yeah, that's
strategically,
right.
right? Versus some of the
Correct.
business people.
Correct. Cool. So we are kind of out of time now, but there are two next steps that we will have. One is, I will have, it may be interesting to have visibility to you into what the three external teams are doing. You probably already know what internal teams are up to. So we will get those details to you. So Amit, Vikshut, and Vaishali, we'll share your pitch decks with Tushar, so Tushar gets to see them.
And
And if
actually,
he
even
has
the
any
internal ones,
ideas,
internal also I haven't seen. So
oh, you haven't seen? Okay, we'll
no,
share the
no.
internal. So we'll share all of those with you. Actually,
Okay, yeah.
I'll share. I'll give you access to SharePoint. That will
Okay, yeah,
get
I
you.
can just go and take a look. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's one thing we will do. I'll also share with you the list of speakers,
Yep.
so that you can take a look at those, and you can even discuss locally with Mike and give your suggestions as to who else it could be, or to me. I mean, Mike and me are very pretty much synced
Okay.
100% of the
Yep. I
time.
can do that.
So that way we'll just get it going that way.
Okay.
Those are
And
the
then
two immediate next steps. We'll
okay,
say.
yeah. And then again, for everybody on the call, if you run into something, and especially even if it's IT or non-IT, drop me a note. I mean, usually I'm pretty good about responding to emails, so at least I'll try my best to follow up. And then just keep in mind that sometimes some of us at Boeing ourselves find our processes a little bit confusing. So but we are there to, like I said, right? I give you my example. 7 months try to get Dropbox through, and I'm not giving up yet. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, we have had difficulties receiving the signed agreements, which are mostly scanned copies of documents.
Yeah, I
A
know.
lot of
That's
them
what
would be
that's what the
gigabytes of
Horizon
file.
X problem was actually, right? And I'm
Yeah.
getting close, but not yet, not there.
Okay. All right, Tushar, thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time out in your late evening. We appreciate that. In fact, this is the only call that is happening in the daytime for India. Most
Oh, really?
others have
Okay.
happened in the evening. So
I'm
we
okay with
appreciate
nighttime.
that.
I've got because of my Bangalore team, I'm usually working from 8 to 10:30.
You're
So
used to it.
anytime
Okay.
that works. That works for me. Actually, it's
Right,
better
right. Thank you
because
so
I
much.
don't have
Uh,
daytime is a problem. So thanks,
right.
thanks everyone. Good luck, and then keep in touch.
We'll be in touch, Tushar. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.